도검을 들고 한다? 이크에크 소리는 익살스러운 추임새다? 라고 잘못 알고 계신 분들이 있어요. 택견에 대한 오류 정보 바로 잡아볼까요?
바꿔라. 해. 섰다. 해.
택견은 부드러운 동작으로 순간적으로 상대방을 압도하는 한국의 전통 무예이자 민속 경기예요. 도건 같은 도구는 쓰지 않는 맨손 무예합니다.
잠깐, 뭔가 하나 빠졌는데요?
네? 뭘요?
택견은 중요 무형문화재거든요. 1983년에 국가가 중요 무형문화재로 지정했습니다. 그리고 2011년에는 무예로서는 최초로 유네스코가 인류 무형문화유산에 등재했죠.
유네스코 인류 무형 문화유산으로 등재가 되었다고요? 그리고 세계 최초로요?
예, 세계가 인정한 거죠.
맞네요. 우리 고유의 전통 무예이자 세계가 인정한 문화재인 택견. 앞으로 많은 사랑과 관심 부탁드려요. 한국 바로 알리기에
함께 해주세요.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
With the presidential election some 40 days away, preliminary hopefuls from the Democratic Party, including Jae-myung, are rolling out their vision for the country. The People Power Party has announced 4 contestants who will advance to the next round of its primary: Kim Moon-soo, An Cheol-soo, Han Dong-hun, and Hong Jun-pyo. Pope Francis will be laid to rest in a simple tomb outside the Vatican, following a request in his will. People around the world are paying their respects, including here in Korea, where a memorial space was set up in Myeongdong Cathedral. The nation's finance chief, Choi Sang-mok, departed for Washington today for tariff talks with U.S. officials. Other than cooperation in energy and shipbuilding as possible topics, his team is also preparing for unexpected ones too. It's April 22nd, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Presidential primaries heat up in the nation as the June 3rd election approaches. For the latest, our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon is live on the line. Do-yeon, let's begin with the Democratic Party that appears to have a clear frontrunner.
Jung-min, the frontrunner Lee Jae-myung was, however, forced into a quiet day on the campaign trail as he appeared in court for one of his ongoing criminal trials. Still, he took to social media earlier in the day to highlight his pledges, ranging from cutting carbon emissions and reducing plastic use to pushing forward with changes in the medical system. Tomorrow marks the start of the second half of the regional primaries, starting with the Southwest, covering the Jeollado province and Gwangju City. A liberal stronghold, this region accounts for 27% of the Democratic Party's total electors, more than the 18% combined from the previous two voting regions, the Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsangdo provinces. Lee Jae-myung, who has so far secured 90% of the vote, is expected to travel to the region on Thursday. The candidate in second place, Kim Dong-yeon, laid out his development plans for the region today, while third place, Kim Kyung-soo, looking to turn things around, was the first to arrive there.
Let's now turn to the People Power Party. The first round cutoff results are out. Who are advancing to the next round?
Right, Jung-min, PPP's presidential primary is now a four-way race with Kim Mun-soo, An Cheol-soo, Han Dong-un, and Hong Jun-pyo. A 100% open survey among PPP supporters and undecided voters took place from yesterday to 3 p.m. today, and those four were the top-scoring candidates among 8. The party says that due to election laws, exact numbers and rankings cannot be disclosed. Except for An Cheol-soo, the rest were expected to make the cut. An's survival comes amid the first-round cutoff rule being new in this election. Having no weighted votes for PPP electors, it was aimed at providing a boost to candidates who appeal to undecided voters. And An was in favor of impeaching President Yoon Suk-yeol, as opposed to Na Kyung-won, who was seen as An's rival for the fourth spot. Starting with the second round cutoff, the voting will be comprised of 50% eligible PPP electors and 50% on open survey, giving more weight to PPP members than the open survey.
Our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon, thank you. The Supreme Court on Tuesday started reviewing the election violation case against DP's likely presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung as a full bench. This means the court is taking the case more seriously than others due to the level of public interest. Usually, Supreme Court cases are overseen by 4 justices out of the 13. For this case, however, one of the justices has requested to be recused from the bench as he leads the National Election Commission. Lee faces charges of spreading false information regarding urban development projects ahead of the 2021 presidential election. An initial guilty verdict was overturned on appeal last month. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok departed for the U.S. today to attend 2+2 trade consultations, set to take place later this week. Other than expected topics, the Korean team is also preparing for unexpected ones too. Our Park Go-nu reports.
South Korea's Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok departed for the U.S. on Tuesday to attend the upcoming 2+2 trade talks with Washington to address trade and tariff issues.
I will return after paving the way for renewed discussions on strengthening the alliance with the U.S.
The talks reportedly proposed by the U.S. will be the first high-level trade consultations since the start of Trump's second term and will be held on Thursday local time. Joining Choi are Trade Minister An Dok-kun, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer. An is set to depart on Wednesday. Key agenda items are expected to be trade issues following Trump's reciprocal tariffs and bilateral cooperation in energy and shipbuilding. Seoul is also preparing for unexpected topics from the US and accordingly plans to send officials from other ministries, including foreign affairs and agriculture. The government is reportedly preparing for the possibility of Trump joining the talks, as seen in recent negotiations with Japan. Trade Minister An said the agenda items will not cover the FTA or the stationing of US forces in Korea. Acting President Han Duck-soo also on Tuesday expressed hope that the meeting will lead to a win-win solution and mark a meaningful starting point for deeper cooperation between the two countries. 박건우, Arirang News.
Pope Francis, who lived a modest life, will be laid to rest in a simple tomb without ornamentation outside the Vatican, as he had wished. People around the world paid their respects to the late pontiff, who was a voice for the poor and marginalized. An Song-jin has more.
Bells tolled in St. Peter's Square, mourning the death of Pope Francis. People from around the world gathered to grieve the Pope, who died at 88 years old from stroke and heart failure. Though he had been hospitalized for 38 days battling pneumonia in the winter, he had delivered an Easter blessing on Sunday morning, the day before his death.
It's just a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy.
He has been doing a great pastoral work, reaching out to his sheep, and, well, now the Lord is calling him to rest in peace after the great work he has done. We are left to pray for him.
In his will, he asked to be buried in a simple tomb in the ground at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major with a one-word inscription, Franciscus, his name in Latin. That will make him the first pope in more than a century to be buried outside the Vatican. World leaders have also spoken about the death of the pontiff. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Pope Francis a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity, who leaves behind a legacy of faith, service, and compassion. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to put all flags in the country at half-mast, and further announced that he and the First Lady, Melania Trump, will be making it to the funeral. This will be Trump's first visit to another country since the beginning of his second administration. Russian President Vladimir Putin also expressed his condolences. Pope Francis was beloved by many, and following his death, cardinals will now choose the next pope. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
So the passing of the Pope looks to initiate the procedure of electing a new leader of the Catholic Church. Our Choi Sang-mok walks us through that protocol.
With K, that's the literal meaning of conclave, which comes from the Latin conclave. In the Catholic Church, the conclave is the secret meeting of cardinals under the age of 80 held to elect a new pope. The meeting takes place 15 to 20 days after the Pope's death, leaving enough time for a 9-day mourning period and funeral, with cardinals from around the world arriving in Rome. The current conclave traces its roots back to the 13th century. Traditionally, the Pope is buried 4 to 6 days after his death. The process of electing the 267th Pope begins after the mourning period. For this conclave, 138 cardinals are eligible to elect and to be elected as the new pontiff out of the 252 members of the College of Cardinals. During the conclave, the cardinals are locked inside the Sistine Chapel until the new pontiff is chosen. They cast 4 ballots each day, with a 2/3 majority required to choose the Pope. The cardinals are not allowed contact with the outside world, no phones, no television, and no newspapers. After each vote, the ballots are burned, and the smoke coming from the chapel's chimney is the only signal to the outside world. Black smoke means an inconclusive vote, while white smoke marks the election of a new Pope. Once elected, the bells of the Sistine Chapel ring, and after the chosen candidate accepts the office, an official announcement is made, revealing the new Pope's papal name. Pope Francis, elected on March 13, 2013, was chosen after 5 rounds of voting, just 2 days into the conclave. The senior Cardinal Deacon introduces the newly elected pontiff with the traditional declaration, Habemus Papam, meaning we have a pope. Following Pope Francis, the first Latin American pontiff, all eyes are now on whether the next pope for the first time could come from Asia or Africa. Choi Sang-mok, Arirang News.
Public mourning for the deceased Pope Francis has begun in the cathedral of the country's capital. The Archdiocese of Seoul announced that starting at 3 p.m. today, the public can pay their respects at Myeongdong Cathedral. A memorial space has been set up in the cathedral's underground chapel. Cardinal Andrew Yeom-soo-jung and Archbishop Peter Jong-sun-taek visited the place of worship to pay their respects, and so did many South Korean Catholics and non-believers alike. South Korea successfully sent its fourth reconnaissance satellite into space on Tuesday morning Korea time. It's to enhance capabilities to monitor North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, regardless of weather conditions. Kim Bo-kyung covers this latest launch.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Engines full power and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Bandwagon 3.
South Korea's fourth military reconnaissance satellite aboard the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket was launched from a U.S. space base, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, at 8:48 p.m. Monday local time, 9:48 a.m. Tuesday Korea time. 50 minutes after liftoff, the reconnaissance satellite was placed into orbit, and it successfully communicated with the ground station at 12:27 p.m. Korea time, indicating the satellite's normal operation.
The fourth spy satellite launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station successfully separated from the launch vehicle, entered its orbit, and successfully communicated with a domestic ground station, confirming that the satellite is in good working order.
The satellite launched this time was the third synthetic aperture radar satellite, part of South Korea's plan to deploy 5 reconnaissance satellites by the end of this year under the 425 project. Aiming to enhance surveillance of North Korean military activities, South Korea launched its first reconnaissance satellite in December 2023, equipped with electro-optical and infrared sensors capable of capturing detailed images. 2 satellites with SAR sensors, which enable the collection of data regardless of weather conditions, were launched last year in April and December. South Korean military is aiming to send the last one within this year, and once completed, Seoul will be able to monitor North Korea at 2-hour intervals. The country is to deploy dozens of ultra-small satellites by the early 2030s, which is expected to further reduce that interval.
Our surveillance over North Korea would be much strengthened, and after launching ultra-small satellites as well, this will mark a very important step towards self-reliant national defense, as it will significantly reduce our dependence on the US for intelligence capabilities.
While bolstering the core assets that form the foundation of Korea's 3-axis defense system, South Korea is aiming to pave the way to emerge as a strong space power in national defense. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Elsewhere, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signaled that he is open to direct talks with Ukraine for the first time since the full-scale war began more than 3 years ago. During an interview with Russian state TV on Monday, Putin said Russia has always looked positively on any peace initiatives, adding that he hopes that representatives of Kyiv will feel the same way. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the president had in mind negotiations with the Ukrainian side. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky did not directly respond to Putin's comments, but said in his nightly video address on the same day that Ukraine is ready for any conversation that would ensure the safety of civilians.
Wall Street ended sharply lower on Monday in response to crude comments by President Donald Trump, directed at the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, pressuring him to lower interest rates. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Wall Street stumbled to a close on the week's first trading session on Monday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 971.82 points, or 2.48%, to close at 38,170.41. The S&P 500 shed 2.36%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 2.55% to settle at 15,870.90. The so-called Magnificent Seven tech giants all dragged the major indexes lower, with Tesla losing 5.8%, while Nvidia shed more than 4%. Wall Street saw U.S. stocks tumble and bonds sold off as U.S. President Donald Trump threw fresh criticism toward U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell on Monday, pressuring him to cut interest rates. Taken to social media, Trump said the economy would slow unless Powell, who he called Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates immediately. Trump had previously called for the U.S. Fed to lower rates, even hinting at Powell's possible termination. The lack of progress on global trade after Trump announced his reciprocal tariffs earlier this month has also dented investor confidence. Since Trump's announcement on April 2nd, the S&P 500 is down 9%, and both the Nasdaq and Dow Jones fell nearly 10%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Disasters are something we must always be prepared for, as safety matters to all. And with a growing number of foreign people in Korea, the authorities turn their eyes to ensuring them better access to information in times of emergency, who may struggle due to language barrier. Shin Ha-young tells us more.
South Korea is no exception to the growing disaster risks caused by various factors such as climate change and urbanization. Already this year, the country experienced one of the worst wildfires in its history in the southeastern region, and an earthquake struck the central city of Chungju. But not everyone can equally respond to disasters. According to the Justice Ministry, the number of foreigners living in South Korea has been growing annually, with over 2.6 million living in Korea as of last year. However, they are especially vulnerable to disaster-related risks due to language barriers and cultural differences. To address this issue, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety held on Tuesday the 8th annual policy session on disaster and safety management for diplomatic missions to Korea, bringing around 100 participants from 63 embassies.
Apart from disaster management for Korean people, you also thinking about foreigners living in Korea. That's very good gesture from Korean government. And we have had a lot of cooperations between Korean government and with Laos too, including with ASEAN member states.
The session addressed a range of topics, including Korea's comprehensive disaster and safety management system and the effectiveness of disaster alerts and emergency text messaging. One way for foreigners to receive emergency alerts is through the Emergency Ready app operated by the ministry.
A foreign resident can receive the emergency messages in their native languages because of the technical limitation of cell phone technology. So we developed an app which is called Emergency Ready app.
The app offers a multitude of emergency services, including alerts, safety guides, and information on the locations of civil defense shelters in 5 languages. The ministry plans to expand the service to 19 languages by August. During the session, improvements in the country's disaster management were also discussed.
As I said, in Belgium we don't have anything like this, so already much appreciated. But of course, there's always room for improvement. First of all is limit the emergency alerts. It's repeated a lot of times, every day.
Regarding such an issue, the ministry said it is testing a system to cut down on repetitive or similar emergency alerts, aiming to implement it as early as the second half of this year. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
A Korean animation based on the Bible debuted at number 2 at the U.S. box office. and globally raked in millions of dollars on its opening weekend. Lee Eun-jin explains what's special about it.
The animated film The King of Kings, created and produced by Korean studios and filmmakers, debuted at #2 in the North American box office. With its Korean title translating to The Life of Jesus, this marks a milestone for a Korean animation on the global stage. According to the U.S. tracking site Box Office Mojo, The King of Kings raked in $7.01 million across 3,200 theaters in North America on its opening day on April 12th. The film's opening weekend earnings surpassed $19.4 million globally, making it the largest debut for an animated biblical movie since 1998's The Prince of Egypt, and continued its success over the Easter weekend, bringing in $17.2 million.
From the beginning, we targeted the North American market as our main target audience. The US is a country founded by Puritans, and although it is not the same as it used to be, it is still a country with a strong Christian cultural tradition. So we were confident that this theme would resonate with audiences. That said, the success has been far greater than we anticipated, leaving us feel a bit overwhelmed.
The story of the life of Jesus is well known, but it had never been made into a feature-length animated film for the theater. Written and directed by Mofak Studios CEO Jang Sung-ho, who was inspired by Charles Dickens's book The Life of Our Lord, and tells the story of a father taking his youngest son on a journey through time to restore their relationship. To this fresh approach, Jang added extraordinary computer graphics and visual effects. Director Jang endured a decade of rejections for investments to bring this film to theaters. But it is now set to make its way around the world, with anticipation high for its release in South American theaters before it comes to Korea at the end of July. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
Strong rain has been falling across the country all day today. In inland areas, heavy rain of 5 to 50 millimeters per hour has been pouring. On the south coast, there are also strong winds along with thunder and lightning. In most areas, 5 to 30 millimeters of rain is expected through the day. This rain is accompanied by gusty winds, with a strong wind advisory in place on the south coast. Winds of up to 20 to 25 meters per second will blow in the mountainous areas and coastal areas, 50 meters per second in the rest of the country. Most of it will stop late tonight, but on the east coast, rain will continue until tomorrow morning. Morning will start mild with Seoul and Jeju at 13 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 16 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 24 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 19 degrees in Busan and Jeju. The temperatures will drop a bit from Friday morning, with the temperature in Seoul falling to 7 degrees Celsius. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor, 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Galbijjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait. Did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Tonight, we turn our attention to U.S.-South Korea trade relations with a specific focus on the semiconductor sector. As both nations prepare for the upcoming 2+2 trade talks, key industries such as the automotive, steel, and semiconductor sectors are set to take center stage. With rising tariffs, trade imbalances, and increasing geopolitical tensions, South Korea's semiconductor industry faces critical challenges. With the U.S. looking to expand local production, how should South Korea respond to ensure its semiconductor sector remains competitive in the global market? And what steps should companies take to navigate these uncertain times? To explore on this, we connect to Sung-soo Eric Kim, founder and CEO of DataCrunch Global and adjunct professor at Yonsei Graduate School of Business. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me tonight.
And also joining us is William Brown, a former member of the board of directors at the Korea Economic Institute of America and the principal of Naia.com. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to be here.
Let's start our discussion first with Professor Kim. So, like I've said, the upcoming 2+2 trade talks are expected to address issues on tariffs on automobile and steel products and semiconductors as well. How likely do you think it is that South Korea will be able to negotiate a reduction or a removal of these tariffs, specifically in the semiconductor area?
I think that we are trying to negotiate with the Trump administration at a very difficult time. We have an upcoming election, and we do not have a formal leader to discuss these kind of very important economic cooperation with Trump. So I think the best strategy that Korea should take is to defer any kind of tariff imposing policies of U.S. until the new administration is inaugurated in Korea, and we have time to sit down and think about how to respond to the United States. However, meanwhile, we have to extend our clear message that we want to avoid the tariff in return of a stronger economic cooperation with the United States. I think that message should be delivered really clear in this visit.
Right, so reassuring strong cooperation and alliance with the U.S. would be crucial. Now, with the U.S. seeking to expand its local production in key sectors like semiconductors, what kind of incentives or proposals do you think South Korea will present during these talks to ensure its own semiconductor industry remains competitive and also benefits from the negotiations, Professor Brown?
Yeah, you know, it's quite interesting. A lot of this tariff or trade action trouble began, in my view, with the bipartisan act, what we call the CHIPS Act, CHIPS Act, in 2022, in which the U.S. launched into a new area of industrial policy, of helping build in this case, semiconductor plants in the United States. Korea, especially Samsung, would immediately jump to take advantage and did very well with it. They got I think it's about a $6 billion grant to build a plant in Tyler, Texas. And that plant is well underway now. It was supposed to be finished by now. It's not quite. I would argue, but then interestingly, they sort of slowed down, I think because of lack of demand for semiconductors in 2023, 2024. Now, ironically, so the Trump administration was, and a lot of Americans did not like this idea of giving grants to industry companies. But now it seems to me like these tariffs may actually save the planet because they're raising the price of semiconductors coming into the U.S., so it'll help the domestic production. So I would suggest that the Korean side really take advantage of this plant, this big, huge new plant, advertise it saying, you know, this is a great feature, and that the Trump administration is actually helping with it by having some tariffs on foreign production.
Right. So taking into consideration Samsung's latest plant investment in the U.S. would be helpful. So given that South Korea is about to experience a political transition, like we've mentioned, Professor Kim, how should the current government actually approach these trade talks to secure the best outcome for the semiconductor industry, especially considering the next administration may have different priorities?
So the strategy of the Trump administration is not having an exchange one-on-one on industry by industry. Trump administration's strategy is to have a negotiation among industries or even between economic discussions and security discussions. So I think we should maintain a strategy to discuss apple to apple. When it comes to semiconductor industry, we have to understand that U.S. also will be greatly hit if they impose a tariff on the semiconductor industry because our chips are used for Apple iPhones and all the computing devices and are the basis for the AI development of the United States. So that's a scenario that both of the governments do not want to proceed, honestly speaking. But in order to negotiate other sectors, Trump administration is using a card for the semiconductor industry to discuss further with Korea. So I think our best strategy is to discuss still in the tech, this dialogue, so that Korea can also participate in the Stargate program and other initiatives that U.S. is driving for their future AI development and delivering a message that Korea wants to be a strong economic and technology partner in those kind of AI strategies and policies. However, the problem is that our, election is coming up, so we cannot guarantee anything right now. And Trump administration also knows that Korea cannot guarantee anything at this stage. So I think the discussion should be very normative and just setting the base boundaries of what we discuss and how we continue the discussion. Just setting the rules of how we discuss should be the goal of this visit, in my opinion.
Right. So it really is a tricky situation for South Korea. Trade talks often take months, and having a shift in leadership at this time could really affect negotiations as well. So it's really important to keep the negotiations within its category. Now, on top of the tariffs, Professor Brown, the U.S. has indicated it will impose tariffs on South Korean semiconductors. What potential effects do you foresee this having on the South Korean economy? And what kind of steps do you think South Korean companies could take to adjust to these changes?
Now, Korea has developed quite a dependency, the economy, on semiconductors, but it's also very in a dominating position with DRAMs. And I mean, Samsung has done an amazing job, as well as Hynix and others. So I think the impact of tariffs, the interesting thing about tariffs is that they impact differently different countries depending on the rates. So that Korea has actually had an advantage the last few years with the free trade agreement, with no tariffs. Now they'll probably get some tariffs. I can't imagine that they're really going to go up to this maximum level, but they will no doubt have some tariff on them. The thing is, other countries, other providers, Taiwan especially, will also have the same tariff. So in the sense that all the prices rise, Korea is not that badly disadvantaged, I don't think. So I don't think it's that much trouble for the Korean economy generally. Now, it may be some trouble for Korean companies, semiconductor companies, if overall demand, world demand for semiconductors drops. But there's not a real good sense that that's going to happen. In fact, Korean semiconductor exports to the U.S. rose in April so far. Now that may be temporary development.
Right. So impact and damages would likely not be that much of a huge deal for South Korean firms. It could. But what about on Professor Kim's side? Considering, the growing uncertainty around global trade, how should South Korean semiconductors companies adapt their production strategies now to avoid the impact of these tariffs and maintain their competitive edge?
So we have to understand why Trump is trying to impose a tariff on the semiconductor industry specifically. This policy is not, Trump's administration's policy only. During the Biden administration, the first priority of the United States was to secure the semiconductor supply chain so that U.S. can continue the leadership in AI initiatives and the tech industry. So this strategy will continue regardless of which administration U.S. will have in the future. So in that line, I think Korea should really strengthen partnerships globally among the supply chain to ensure that Korea is not alone in this discussion with the United States. So I think that should be the first priority. Second, as a Korean standpoint, Samsung and SK is a global company. So of course, we would like to manufacture semiconductors in the Korean territory, but as a company itself, as a Korean economy itself, it does not really severely impact our country of where we manufacture semiconductors. So that means that we can also consider further geographical diversification, considering North America and other regions to mitigate the risk of tariffs and supply chain risk when this kind of policy will emerge in the future as well. So we have to understand this will be an ongoing situation and this will be the new norm. So we make sure that we geographically diversify manufacturing and also strengthen our bargaining power against other countries by strengthening the global supply chain in the semiconductor industry.
Right. So maintaining flexibility in terms of geographical areas of manufacturing and also expanding partnerships would be key in this context. Now, the semiconductor industry actually plays a crucial role in both the U.S. and South Korean economies. Bill, in your opinion, how important is it for South Korea to maintain strong ties with major American tech companies like Intel, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, particularly given the rising geopolitical tensions at this point?
Yeah, it's just really quite amazing looking at the semiconductor industry, how entangled it all is. It's very hard to put a country name on something or even a company name on something. Samsung, example is cell phones, smartphones. So I've long had a Galaxy Samsung cell phone. My daughter has an Apple. Well, which is made where? Is it American? Which is American? Which is what? It's just very hard to tell. The Apple is actually more Chinese than the Samsung. And the Samsung is actually more American than it is Korean. More value-added with American chips than Korean chips. They all have a little bit of Taiwan chips. It's just a very entangled industry, very complex one. It's very interesting. It makes a magical product, right? So I just bought a Motorola. I was thinking I was going to be a good American, cashed in my Galaxy. Well, the Motorola is Chinese. Motorola is owned by Lenovo, and it's assembled in Vietnam. So the amazing thing here is how entangled it all is. And I think the Korean side should work that to its advantage with these tariffs and saying, how on earth can we tariff one and not the other? You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt us. Who are you? What are you trying to do? So I think it's different for cars. Cars, I think, is a big trouble for Korea. tariffs on cars. But for the semiconductors, I think I'm a little less, if I were a Korean side, I would be a little less worried about semiconductors.
Well, Bill, thank you for the clear-cut explanation with your examples.
Well.
Right, so it is indeed a very complex issue with a lot of countries, you know, having putting an input in one product. Now, President Trump has actually expressed interest in tying U.S. military cost-sharing arrangements to the trade negotiations, as Professor Kim has touched upon a while ago. Could you tell us about the risks that you see in linking these national security concerns directly to trade talks, particularly in terms of the semiconductor sector?
So I think that we first have to understand why Trump wants the semiconductor industry to, move their factories to the United States. Because let's say that there's a risk in Korea or in Taiwan. If there's a risk in this geographical area in Asia, then U.S. economy stops. We already experienced that during COVID, when the global supply chain of semiconductors were disrupted. The automobile industry slowed down. They could not manufacture automobiles because we did not have semiconductors properly being supplied to the automobile industry. Also, other tech sectors will stop. So this is a scenario where the United States does not want to foresee in the future. So that's the reason why U.S. is constantly demanding Korea and Taiwan to move their factories to the United States. However, I think it's not our best strategy to tie the semiconductor discussion with the military discussion, because as I said in the beginning of this interview, I said that I really emphasize that the principles of negotiation should be apple to apple, industry to industry. If you start to mix cards between industries or even between economic discussions and security discussions, then it becomes a really complicated math that we have to solve between the United States and Korea. So we have to, I think, continuously, get into a discussion that we will secure the economic partnership in the semiconductor sector, so that we can also cooperate with future AI developments and technological co-initiatives with United States. I think the discussion, again, should be apple to apple, industry to industry.
Right, apple to apple. That would be very important. Now, let's also touch upon the trade war between Washington and Beijing. Given the ongoing political and economic pressure surrounding U.S. and China, Professor Brown, how should South Korea strategically navigate these negotiations to avoid being caught in the middle of the two superpowers, especially when it comes to its semiconductor exports to both countries?
Yeah, I play a lot of tennis, and we always say in the middle is the wrong place to be, in the middle of the court. We call it, in reality, though, often you want to start in the middle, and if you make a good shot, you come up. If you make a bad shot, you go back to defense. I would argue a little bit the same for Korean industry, playing with U.S. and China. That be agile, be ready to go move back and forth. This is actually a huge advantage, I think, of U.S. industry. U.S. industry is very agile, moving back and forth for such a big country. Taiwan is also, Hong Kong, Singapore. But Japan and Korea have tended to be kind of very conservative, not moving very well. And I would argue, and I think it's a function of their sort of oligopoly, even monopolistic competition inside the two countries, Japan and Korea. So I would argue Korean industry is a problem because it's so oligopolistic. lack of internal competition. So I would argue Korea should be working hard to have more internal competition, maybe even with foreign companies, so that it can be more agile dealing with both U.S. and China. But in the long term, the easy answer is don't move to Beijing. Beijing, think of your car industry, what the Chinese properly did with their own industry. They built their own industry of cars using foreign technology. But as a result, Korea no longer exports cars to China. And if you're not careful, they'll be exporting cars like crazy into Korea and devastate your car industry. So I think the evidence is pretty clear. You need to side with the Western side, the market side, and be very wary of Chinese, what we call state capitalism there.
Right. So being caught between, two superpowers, it's like you said, it's never easy.
Not the right place to be.
Right. So it would be crucial for South Korea to, carefully diversify its markets while also ensuring strong ties with the U.S. for a long-term success. So we'll really have to wait and see how that develops in the near future. So, yeah, but as of now, we actually will have to wrap up our program for tonight. Thank you so much for your insights and your time, Professor Brown and Professor Kim. We appreciate it.
No,
thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.